Ready when you are.
Okay, we're live. Welcome, everyone. As a result of the declaration of emergency issued by the Municipality of McDougall for the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the requirements for social distancing, this committee council meeting will be held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001. I would now ask that the clerk take a roll call to determine quorum and advise who is participating in the meeting today. Mrs. West.
Thank you. Mayor Robinson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Constable.
Present.
Councillor Gregory.
Present.
Councillor Malott. He has sent his regrets. Councillor Ryman.
Present.
It is determined that we do have quorum to proceed with the meeting. I'll take attendance of staff to advise who is joining us. Tim Hunt, CAO.
Present.
Chief Leduc.
Present.
Aaron Robinson, Treasurer.
Present.
Kim Dixon, Chief Building Official.
Present.
And myself, Lori West, Clerk.
Thank you. The regular meeting of council tonight will be preceded by a public meeting to consider proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. Now in the public meeting, first one, Lynn Mercer, 75 Haynes Lake Road, parts lot 11 and 12, concession 2. This is the Z01-2020 zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone part of lots 11 and 12, concession 2, from the waterfront residential 6 zone to the rural zone. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the road front lot as rural, as is no longer part of a waterfront parcel. This rezoning is a condition of consent number B05-2020 by the Prairie Sound Area Planning Board. I will now ask the clerk, do we receive any written correspondence on this file?
No correspondence received.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who wishes to make verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to this zoning bylaw amendment? Seeing no one, move on to the second item under the public meeting tonight. Item 2 is Robert Durrance and Susan Durrance, 25 Lake Ridge Road, part lot 20, concession 10, regarding Z02-2020 zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone part of lot 20, concession 10, from the rural zone to the waterfront residential 1 zone. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to put the whole of the applicant's lands in the waterfront residential WF1 zone. The rezoning is a condition of consent number B20/2020 by the Prairie Sound Area Planning Board. Did we receive any written correspondence on this file?
No correspondence received.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who wishes to make verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to this zoning bylaw amendment? Seeing none. Following the consideration of a proposed bylaw, which may take place at the discretion of council later this evening, anyone who wishes to appeal the decision of council may file with the clerk of the municipality during the appeal period and in the prescribed manner. The appeal period is in effect for 20 days, commencing on the date the notice of passing of this bylaw is sent out. I now declare the public meeting closed. Reminder to council that movers and seconders for all motions have been assigned. If when the motion is read, you would prefer not to move or second a particular motion, please advise me at that point before I proceed. I now call the regular meeting of McDougall Council to order. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Prioritization of the agenda. No changes for tonight. Item 4, moved by Councillor Ryman, seconded by Councillor Constable, that the minutes of the committee council meeting held on November 4th, 2020 be adopted as circulated. Discussion on the minutes. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Move on to deputations. We have one scheduled for tonight. Rita Orr, the CAO, and Tom Lundy, the board chair of the Prairie Sound Public Library, the 2021 budget presentation from the library board. Welcome, Mrs. Orr and Mr. Lundy. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'll just start. Mayor Robinson, I thank you for allowing us to make this presentation tonight. I don't want to say too much right now because I think that our infomercial that you're going to see in just a few minutes will explain a lot of things, and then maybe I might have some comments at the end. I'll ask Rita if she wants to say anything at this time.
Not right now. I think the commercial will say everything.
I'll cue that up.
In March of 2020, we were all suddenly faced with an unprecedented challenge.
Here we are, Harrison Public Library. As you can see, we have shampooed the carpet. Everything is up in the air for the carpets to dry. Everything has been wiped down. We certainly miss everyone. We miss the people.
At the Parry Sound Public Library, we knew we had to quickly shift gears and find new ways to connect with and unite our community. In an uncertain time, we strive to provide stability, continue to reach out, to develop and innovate. The entire team here at the library came together to brainstorm and collaborate. Our goal was simple: be proactive, do our best, and provide outstanding service to our patrons. The delivery just looked a little different as we moved from in-person to online platforms. From May to October, staff have received and assisted with over 1,000 phone calls and facilitated over 80 virtual programs. Our steady presence on social media and online gives our community seamless access to available resources and activities. Things got really exciting in May as the province flattened the curve. We were able to open our doors for curbside pickup. 631 items were picked up curbside from the library from May 19th to October 1st. New ideas led to creative and interactive learning for patrons of all ages. Our mystery bags have been a huge hit. We've had 79 checked out so far to rave reviews. On the administrative side, our board developed 12 new policies. Summer arrived, and the Parry Sound Public Library was finally able to initiate a soft reopening on July 21st. New policies and regulations outlined safe practices for all staff and patrons. From opening until October 1st, we had 987 self-help patrons visit the library. Since May, 7,153 items have been circulated. Our virtual offline meetings were also a great success. Including curbside pickups, we had a total of 1,618 patron visits. Interlibrary loans also continued with 45 incoming and 119 outgoing items. At the Parry Sound Public Library, we take great pride in our teamwork and dedication to the community throughout this challenging time. We will continue to do our best with a focus on keeping our staff and patrons safe. The new accessible circulation desk is just one more way we look forward to better serving our community. Thank you to all who supported us during our fundraising events. Our Elevating Minds campaign will continue moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very professionally done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just go first, Rita, and hand off to
Yeah,
you.
you go for it. It's so different not being on Zoom.
Again, thanks for seeing us. I just wanted to say that having come to the library board as a representative of the Township of the Archipelago, where I was once a counselor, I didn't quite understand how things ran and how much we depend on our member partners to make sure that the library runs with our service contracts. When we shut down in March, we were one of the first to shut down just before Parry Sound passed their bylaws. But the board decided to keep our staff working, and they did work, and they worked hard. And they started initially with virtual services. We were one of the first, if not the first, in the north and probably in Ontario to go to curbside pickup. We were one of the first to go to soft opening with shortened hours, which we continue to this day. And I just want to say there's a mention in that video that says that the board developed all these policies. I'd like to take credit for it, but I'll give credit where credit is due. The board simply passed the policies. The policies were written by staff. They've been picked up by other library boards all over Ontario, all over Canada, and as far away as Australia. People are coming onto are accessing our policies, and Rita can expand on that even more. So I'm going to end there, and I'll turn it over to Rita.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for having us tonight. And it has been challenging, and but also at the same time, we've got a great team here at the Parry Sound Library and a great board too. So we are all working together and hard. And it has been different. And virtual, I mean, we've all had to learn different things. And I certainly tonight had issues with my computer. So it's always a learning experience, what we're in right now. And down the road, I think it's just going to continue. So the support of the community and partners is so important to us. And also, we miss everybody. I just want to say that, like, we do miss the people. We are averaging, I'm going to say, approximately 150 people a week coming in, and it's picking up, but it goes slow again. So I'm just wondering if you had any questions, any of you, that we can maybe answer, and if not, that's fine too.
All right, thank you both for that. I'll put it to council. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Constable?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, year after year, I really appreciate the hard work that the library does. The community programming you put out is fantastic, and especially even now in these challenging times, it never ceases to amaze me what you guys are able to do and put together. And as much as you've had community support, I really appreciate how much you guys support the community and bring the community together in your different endeavors. So I just want to say thank you for everyone's hard work at the library and on the board level.
Thank you.
Any
We
questions?
do have a new, sorry, I just want to mention, we do have a new initiative that we started a month ago. We have a podcast now. So if you go on our website, and we have now 2 podcasts set up on our website, and to listen, it's about a half an hour, and it is community support too. And podcasts are a big thing, I'm going to say, with the 40 and under group of people. I was with my daughter last week for a week, and I must have listened to 20 podcasts with her, and that's all they do, that group, age group. So we are trying to reach out to different age groups. So the podcast is working for us also. So if you have an opportunity, you can listen to it.
Okay, thank you. I'll just make my comment, just echoing Councillor Constable. I mean, we very much appreciate what you do for the public. We're now discovering during this pandemic that as much as there are health issues, there are also emotional and psychological issues as well dealing with this pandemic. And I think outlets like the library help to fulfill that for people so they can try and get back to some sort of normality in these very unnormal times. So it's your role, I think, is even more important now than it ever has been before in terms of servicing our community. And I'm happy and glad to see that you're stepping up to the plate and doing that. So on behalf of McDougall, thank you to your board and to your staff for making that effort. Your timing, this is a budget request, so we're just starting our more serious budget discussions at our next council meeting. So you'll certainly be on foremost in terms of that discussion. So thank you very much for that. And just Mr. Lundy, since I haven't had a chance to see you since, I'd just like to thank you for your co-chairing responsibilities with the Pool and Wellness Center Citizens Group. That was much appreciated as well. Do that. That group spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of good input that came back to the ad hoc committee. So thank you for that effort and what you did. And thank you to our clerk, Mrs. Weston, who volunteered her time to do the minutes for that citizens group as well. Very much appreciated. So you get 2 pats on the shoulder tonight, Mr. Lundy.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to recognize Lori for all her efforts too, because without her, we wouldn't have been as professional as we were, and we might have run astray a few times. But and also the Municipality of McDougall for pre-COVID, allowing us to use the municipal chambers, and then post-COVID or after COVID hit, allowing us to utilize your Zoom video conference program. So thank you.
You're welcome. Good night. Matters arising under deputations. On to item 6, planning and building. Report of the clerk planner 2020-12. Backyard chickens information report. Mrs. West.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report has been provided in the council's agenda package for information. At the last meeting, council requested that staff bring forward a report outlining the process to amend our bylaws should council choose to consider backyard chickens, and as well as other considerations on the matter. So just to summarize, in order to make an amendment, it would be to our comprehensive zoning bylaw. Currently, section 3.52 of the prohibited uses, item K, prescribes that except as specifically permitted by the bylaw, the keeping of horses, cows, pigs, goats, chickens, and other farm animals in any residential, being an RR zone, or any waterfront residential 1 to waterfront residential 6, so WF1 to WF6 zone. So in order to consider the chickens, we would need to proceed to proceed with the zoning bylaw amendment process, which would include providing notice in accordance with the Planning Act, which we would have to do in the local paper as well as our municipal website. We would provide notice there as well. Then we would hold a public meeting, which would provide public input and the decision of council in the form of a bylaw would likely be presented at a following meeting for council's consideration. And during, after that time, there's a 20-day appeal period. Further in the report, you'll see that I've provided a number of considerations regarding infection or disease, noise, odor, and community concern. Many of these concerns have been mitigated looking at other municipal bylaws and how they deal with chickens in the residential zone. So unless council has any questions for me, the recommendation by staff is that you receive the report for information at this time and provide direction on one of the following options: continue to enforce the existing zoning bylaw and prohibit backyard chickens in the RR zone, or proceed with the zoning bylaw amendment process.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council? I kind of go around the table with the support of two options, I guess, in front of us. One is status quo. Second is to have staff move forward in terms of looking at changing what we do allow under our current bylaws. Mrs. West.
Just to note that Mr. Leduc is joining us if council has any questions on the enforcement side as well.
Any comment, Mr. Leduc, before council asks questions of you?
No specific comment, Your Worship, just a simple fact that depending on a time frame, and if you choose item 2 or option 2, our enforcement would still be based on a complaint basis, and we would still react to a complaint basis even during the process. Everything would be based on our findings at any particular complaint incident. But certainly we are in the process, or we have the ability to work with any one of the our customers or clients that potentially might find themselves in a non-compliant situation. We do always want to work with our people to ensure that we can at some point in the future get to compliance. So just that small item.
Thank you. Council? Councilor Ryman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering, I know we've received a lot of letters and I know they're posted online as part of this meeting. If we've received any negative feedback on the requests that we've received.
I'll direct that question to staff. Mrs. West?
Through you, your worship, not at this time. However, we would still have to go through that public consultation period that would allow for both those in support and opposition to comment. At this time, it's really been focused on supporters.
Councillor Constable?
Yeah, I'd just like to voice my support of going with option number 2. I'm sure we'll get both sides of the issue coming up from that, which would be really good to be able to move this forward, get the information out there more in the public so that we could have a more fuller discussion with both sides and then go from there. But I would definitely be in support of option 2.
Thank you. Councillor Ryman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would also be in support of option 2. Mrs. West has done a good job of laying out all of the issues that could or couldn't be faced, and quite a bit of information there on procedures and that. So I would also be in support of option 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gregory? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just my concern is I would think we should go with option number 2, but the concern I had to do with liabilities for us as a municipality. That wasn't addressed in the things that were researched. Possibly there's some other information in regards to that.
Yeah, I think that's, well, as we move forward with option 2, which it looks like from what I'm hearing from council is the route that we're going to be going, then we will be receiving a lot more information from staff and from the public in terms of just what liabilities there are on the municipality and on the actual homeowner themselves.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Just one question I guess I have, or there's several questions, but one, I know in some municipalities, they go with a licensing system. So I've received some information on that. But if for that, we would still go down the route of having to change the bylaw first, and then the licensing is part of that bylaw. Is that how that would work out? Mrs. West?
Yes, correct. So the bylaw would, we would amend our comprehensive zoning bylaw and perhaps have a standalone bylaw just for backyard hens with all the requirements. And if a licensing or a permit application is something that council's interested in proceeding with, we can also include. That is mentioned somewhat in my report as well, that some municipalities will have a licensing fee. Sometimes it's per hen, sometimes it's just a flat rate. The one that I did quite like was it included a requirement for electrical safety authority certificate. Many backyard hens need some kind of heating source, so once they have their approval, well, then that requires them to provide that ESA certificate to us as well.
Okay. So all these details will be fleshed out as we go forward in this process then to see. I mean, I'm not, when I look at the licensing, I'm not so concerned or interested in terms of revenue generation. I'm just looking at it more as a very easy way to track just exactly where we do have these situations. And then I'll just, from my own personal perspective, I mean, I'm happy with people if that's what they want to do. And I think it's good in terms of a food source. It's good in terms of a family environment, in terms of young children and adults alike being exposed to probably what goes back to our roots in terms of food generation. On the other hand, as always at the council table, we have to strike that balance. We have to bear in mind we're going to have neighbors to some of these setups who have to be protected as well. And they have to have some sense of comfort that their way of life is not going to be impacted by this either. So as we go through this process, we're going to have to make sure we weigh both sides of it and set up a process where we're not pitting neighbor against neighbor, I would hope, as we go forward, because that's definitely not what we want to do. And that's not the spirit of how we do things in McDougall as citizens. So I don't think I have to go any further. From the comments from the 3 councillors present and myself, I think we're in favor of going to option 2 to start the investigation. And so we'll give that as direction to staff and look forward to working our way through this process. Is there any other questions or comments before we move on that? All right, thank you. Matters arising under planning or building? None. Bylaw enforcement? Matters arising? Fire protection? Matters arising? Item 9, emergency management, COVID-19 emergency response. Municipality of McDougall is still in a state of emergency as declared by myself. I think with the current second wave gaining legs and starting to surpass what we saw in the spring, it would just be prudent on our part to leave ourselves in that state of emergency. We really haven't had to use much of those powers that are granted under that, but I think it's just good to have that flexibility to be able to react quickly if we do have to react quickly. Matters arising under emergency management. Recreation. Matters arising. Mr. Leduc.
Your worship, I did have an opportunity since our last meeting to speak with Ron Bowman from the Snowmobile Club. And Mr. Bowman has also spoken with the president of the Snowmobile Club with regard to 9 Mile Lake Road and the report that I had produced at the last council. Now, ultimately, in a perfect world, as Mr. Bowman and the club president state, would be 9 Mile Lake Road would be 2 feet of snow as a full wide trail all winter long, but we don't live in a perfect world. But they are willing to, after speaking with them, they are willing to certainly work with us again and to see if plowing the road this winter and working with the Snowmobile Club to maintain a trail there at the same time, they're willing to do that to see how everything works out again. They didn't have any issues when we had to do this 2 years ago. So it was a positive conversation.
Okay. Any questions then or comments from staff before we give direction to Mr. Leduc to proceed with that plan for 9 Mile Lake? No, because I think our previous direction was subject to the input from the Snowmobile Club. Then I think council was supportive of the plan. So I'm going to take it that I'm not seeing any comments from council at this point or changes. So I'm going to leave it at that. So we'll give direction to Mr. Leduc and to his staff then to proceed with that plan. Okay. Any other matters arising under recreation? Any ice at the McDougall Rec Center yet, Mr. Leduc?
Your worship, there was about a 2-foot patch this morning, but certainly not enough to utilize for skating.
All right. We'll wait. We're a ways away from Christmas skate yet anyway. Public Works, matters arising. Mr. Hunt?
If I could just touch on a couple of things that come up today. The large culvert replacement at CN Rail on the Bunny Trail happened today, or it's happening still. We started at 6 o'clock this morning and the boys are still there now. That turned out to be a very big job for us. They hope to have that closed up by 8 o'clock tonight. They do have 1.5 lanes open now at the beginning of the meeting. So by 8 o'clock, they'll have both lanes opened up and then they'll finish up that job tomorrow. All went well with CP or CN Rail and our crew. It's always a lot easier to deal with CN than it is to deal with CP. CN just seem to have a different mindset to collaboration and working together. So it went very well today. The second thing that happened today was Hall Construction started connecting water services to the Grandview Estate lots today. So two water services went in today on Parkway, 2 more will go in on Parkway tomorrow. and one more off of Parkway to a private landowner. So by Friday, we'll have at least 5 more services connected to the water system. I did speak with Halls today to see if they were going to continue working, and they wouldn't commit to that there, but they're going to try and finish off the Parkway section before snow, and then first thing in the spring, they can continue down Novell Road and connect the other 16 lots. So looks good. Things are moving forward. We'll at least have 4 or 5 more lots here shortly to have done.
Certainly good news. We've been working with this developer for a few years now in terms of getting to this stage, but now we're at that stage, and overall we're looking at 20 new lots on municipal water inside the village of Novell. So that's good. I know there's been a pent-up demand out there for lots from builders and from homeowners to get some construction going. So I look forward to seeing the first building start to go up there in the very near future. So that is good news.
Good.
Any other matters arising under Public Works?
No.
Environment, waste management. Any matters arising? Finance, accounts payable resolution. Moved by Councillor Constable, second by Councillor Gregory, that the attached list of accounts payable for November 19th, 2020 in the amount of $180,356.01 and payroll for November 19th, 2020 in the amount of $50,320.87 be approved for payment. Discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. Item 13.2 under finance is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund allocation. Mrs. Robinson, do you want to speak to this?
I will, thank you. Our 2021 allocation with OMPF was announced. It is approximately $780,000, which is a $10,000 increase over 2020. I'm just really happy to see that we do have stable funding for 2021. Ongoing in the future after 2021, we will question whether or not we can continue to have this, but at that time we will cross that bridge when we come to it. It's also important to note that our OMPF funding primarily goes to fund our capital projects as well as our reserve funds, which in turn eventually fund our capital projects as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments from council? I'll just make comment. Certainly it is good. That's a very vital part of our budgeting process in terms of running the municipality. So it's an important key for us. And the other important part of it is getting this notice in a timely fashion so that we're not, as we go into our budget discussions, we know that that money is there for us, which is good. So it's stable at this point and it's timely. So that appreciate that effort from the province. Item 13.3, Robert Clark, 16 White Beaver Trail, request for council to consider penalty and interest relief. Mrs. Robinson.
Mr. Clark contacted me a few months ago to discuss an issue he had with his property tax bill. Mr. Clark had a cottage property and a large parcel of land that was severed. At that time, when the severance was put through, the severance was actually the legal documentation for the owner was put through and registered with the land registry with his brother's name. Mr. Clark did not receive a tax bill for this new severed piece of property. It was actually going to his brother's address, as well as any MPAC assessment notices, which would have notified him of the current value of the property and so on. Mr. Clark indicates that he came into the office requesting if there was a second tax bill available for this new severed piece. However, I'm not sure if maybe it was an ask to our staff that it could be in a different name. Our staff wouldn't know that per se if he asked for a second tax bill under the name Robert Clark. So I think there could have been a little bit of an issue there because our staff wouldn't have known to look under his brother's name. Mr. Clark is asking for a penalty relief in the amount of approximately $2,200, which is approximately 5 years worth of arrears taxes, interest and penalties. I did indicate to Mr. Clark that it is up to the property owner to indicate if there is a change of address, and if they are not receiving their tax bill, to inquire. It could have been that the right questions were not asked or the information was not given to staff to look further for that tax bill. So at that time, I did indicate to Mr. Clark that I would not offer any penalty or interest relief. And he then requested to speak with Mayor Robinson. And Mayor Robinson and I spoke. And at that time, Mayor Robinson also agreed with my opinion that it is the taxpayer's responsibility to notify us of any changes of address and so on. So as far as we are aware, the brother was receiving the tax bills the entire time. And if the brother had moved, we were not given any change of address for him moving. So I would also assume that MPAC documents were sent to the primary person on the land registry documents, which was the brother.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from comments from council? Councillor Ryman?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It sounds like a bit of a miscommunication gap between the two brothers, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Constable?
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty unfortunate situation, but I think really, you know, like you're saying, it is the property owner's responsibility. If you know you're missing it, and you're continually missing a bill for an entire piece of property year after year, I'm sure lots of effort could have been made on their part, and I'm sure they did realize that. It is unfortunate, but I do think that I agree with the original, with what was originally said in regards to collecting. It's too bad, but.
Councillor Gregory?
Yes, Your Worship. We do the same thing.
Oh, you were, now you're muted.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. My concern is just that if this tax bill kept arriving in the brother's name, how come this gentleman is responsible for the taxes if it's the brother's property?
Mrs. Robinson?
They're both co-owners, but the primary owner registered with land registry for the address and information was the brother's information. And apparently the brother moved, but also did not notify us. One of the procedures we have in our office, if someone does move and requests a change of address, we make it mandatory that it is written, whether that be in an email form or we have a form at the office if people physically come in to change it that they have to sign, just so that we have a record of someone changing their address so situations like this can't happen.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So at this point in time, we're just, well, and going forward, we're sticking with the rules and procedures that we've been following in the treasurer's office and with staff there. So there will be no change to this current situation on this billing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matters arising under finance. Mrs. Robinson?
Thank you. There are a few. We have 3 upcoming tax sale properties. One of the properties that was in tax sale, the full balance was paid, and so it was removed from tax sale. But 3 upcoming tax sale properties will occur next Wednesday. Also, notice has been given for our water and wastewater rate increases. These increases were part of the financial plan that was presented to council in October, outlining the next 6 years for the water system. The proposed increases cover 3 years in order for us to reassess at that time and to determine with additional users on the system, hopefully at that point, the subdivision will be completed, that we will have a better picture of the water operations at that time. So there's just 2 notices there. And other than that, we are getting busy and into budget season, and we are starting that process.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions on those items? No. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you.
Move on to, there's no other matters arising under finance. I'll move on to administration. First item is for the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding municipal delegations to the Roma 2021 conference. So that's just, there's a deadline attached to that in terms of, I'm not sure if anyone's decided whether they're attending this virtual conference or not. And then if so, in the past, we've made our deputations. I mean, any ones that I would suggest are ones we've already tried and done. The school board issue, basically, we've been years and years of trying to fight that battle. But anyway, I don't see a point of that one at this point in time to do anything. We have made previous delegations in terms of natural gas into McDougall, and we're proceeding on chasing that one through our member of provincial parliament and with the gas supplier for the area. So that's really nothing we have to do in that. So I don't see any other deputations right now at this point in time that would be beneficial to moving the business of McDougall forward. So I can't, if no one in the council has any, I don't have any suggestions for them at this point in time. Okay. Item 2, report of the clerk, shore road allowance application for Evans. Mrs. West.
Thank you, Your Worship. Pretty straightforward application, 131 Highway 124. The applicant has recently purchased the lands. There's a bit of a dilapidated cottage on the property that he wishes to remove. It is within the shore road allowance. So in order to demolish and reconstruct, he requires the shore road allowance, which will be built in accordance with the zoning bylaw. There is a current survey on the property for the shore road allowance, so the process is actually quite streamlined compared to our regular situation. So both neighbors have already signed off on those lot line projections in accordance with that registered plan. So the recommendation is just to proceed with this application to bylaw to stop up and close and transfer the road allowance subject to our regular notice requirements.
Great, thank you. Is council agreeable to proceeding in principle with this application? Right, not seeing anyone opposed to it. So then we'll give that as direction then to proceed with the application. I'm always happy in these situations to see straight lines going out on an angle in front of somebody else's property. It does make it very straightforward, certainly. Item 3 from Danny Whalen, President of FONOM, media release regarding the municipal partnership funding, which we've just discussed earlier under the finance. And from Town of Parry Sound, comprehensive zoning bylaw review. There for information. Matters arising under administration. Okay. For support from the Municipality of Meaford, Bill 218, supporting Ontario's Recovery Municipal Elections Act. City of Hamilton amending the AGCO licensing and application process for cannabis retail stores to consider radio separation from other cannabis locations. Same support for either one of those. Matters arising under support. Motions which notice have been previously given. I'm not aware of any. Committee reports from the health unit. November is Fall Prevention Month, a reminder to everyone. Also from the health unit, act now to prevent the spread of COVID-19. From the health unit, the Community Food Clinic in Mattawa, there for information. Also from the health unit, Community Food Clinic in West Nipissing. Item 5, Parry Sound Area Planning Board, special meeting discussion, Town of Parry Sound withdrawal from the Parry Sound Area Planning Board. I think it's the minutes are there from that meeting that took place at the last planning board in terms of Parry Sound's request. I believe as a result of that, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing was going to reach out to each one of the municipalities. We at McDougall had asked our staff to just prepare a report in terms of what our options are and what the impact of those options would be, which I think is scheduled to come forward at the next council meeting, correct? Anything else from staff or council to add on the planning board at this point in time? All right, thank you. Matters arising. Committee reports. All right. Report of the CAO, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you. So today, as far as the COVID measures go that we have in place, we're going to leave them. They seem to be working well. Even though the province is experiencing, like the mayor said earlier, some extremely high numbers in the south, but they all seem to be in the larger centers. So we're going to continue to work the way we are, and we meet with staff on a regular basis to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our staff as safe as possible. The wellness and pool project appears to be moving in a successful direction. The province has asked the steering committee for clarification on a few items in the funding application, and have said now that they believe they have enough information to complete that assessment. So what they asked for was a few concerns they had about how the First Nations issues were going to be addressed, how they would have representation, and would it be a part of the overall board? So there was only 6 or 7 questions, very easy to answer. They were satisfied with that there, and they say they now have enough information to move forward with a decision. So hopefully that decision comes sooner than later. The Nobel Church transfer is moving forward finally. It's now in the hands of the church itself to sign off and sign back so we can get the transfer done. So hopefully that'll happen in the next couple of weeks. Long process. A process that should have been a very simple thing to do turned out to be not complicated, but very long in time. Just ridiculous amount of time to do that. The next news that came in last week late was the ICIP, the Canada Infrastructure Program, has released some funding for COVID resilience. You looked at all the eligible projects that you could do on that list. The 2 that I think I'd like to move forward with is to move forward with an application for funding to complete the renovations at the municipal office and use the balance of the money for accessibility renovations to the Nobel Church. We know when we take that building over, we're going to have accessibility issues for entrance. We're going to have accessibility issues in the washrooms and the kitchen. And it generally needs some clean up and tidy up inside the building itself. This funding is not going to cover any major renovations we want to do, but it'll certainly put us in a position where we can operate the building in a positive manner and a respectful manner to the citizens at the same time. So those are the 2 projects I'd like to apply to this funding stream for. If council has something different in mind, glad to hear it, and we'll have that discussion. So staff recommends an application be submitted to help the fund renovations of the municipal office and accessibility renovations to Nobel Church. I'll just stop there for a second if you want to deal with that one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So I'll put it back out to council then. The 2 recommendations from staff for this grant application, which I think is the amount of $100,000. Yeah. If I saw the paperwork correctly, would be to make that application, splitting the money between the office renovations. You'll recall we did go to tender for the office renovations at the front here, and it was over our budgeted amount. So council at that time prudently decided not to proceed with that tender because it was over the budget. And then the other allotment would be for the, if we do obtain the Nobel Church as a recreation and meeting facility. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Constable.
I know this is kind of an open-ended question, but in regards to the municipal office, I don't know, is there any thought or plans for replacement down the road? And just for the amount of money they were looking for to replace some windows and do the little bit of front repairs, it almost made me think, is it worth doing it? I don't know what council's general thoughts are on that or anything. Just thought I'd raise the question.
John?
Good question. We've asked ourselves that about 100 times here, whether we're going to replace this office someday. I don't see it happening in the very near future. I mean, any municipal building you look at that's been done in the last 5 years tags in anywhere between $1 million and $1.6 million. We're a long way from being there. I think this building will last us another few years for sure. Even if we get another 5 or 10 years of it, it's not that bad. And these renovations do need to be done. The renovations to the office will be retendered. We won't just award the previous tender. This will be retendered again, and we'll see what kind of numbers we get. If we get a bunch of silly numbers again, then we'll look at it again. How we divide the money up between the projects, I don't think it has to be specific in the application. You just have to identify where it's going and the total amount. So that's how I was going to move forward with that there.
Just to clarify on that point that you've raised, so we make the application for 100,000. If approved, then if we need more for a recreation center and less for an office or vice versa, then we would have that flexibility to move that money around.
Yeah, that's how I understand the program, yeah.
So at this point in time, we're not really agreeing to what the exact expenditures are going to be. We're just saying those are two projects that we have on the horizon for ourselves. But in answer to your open-ended question, Councillor Constable, I mean, we know coming down the road, we're going to have, unfortunately, 2 school properties that are going to be declared surplus by the Near North Board at some point in time. Those are 2 locations to look at, although I think my limited experience and some of this people in the room and in this meeting have a lot more experience that once you get into renovations, you're usually, if they're very extensive, it's not very long before you just see the light that a new building is what you would do. But also at this point in time, this building here is extremely functional. A lot of work's gone into it by staff and by upgrades that we've done by going out for bids. So I don't see it at the point where it's going to be going away. But on the other hand, we also keep our eye on the ball there as well. I mean, you're saying we have those windows and that at the front for doing it. We saw in our recent windstorm and power outage that, I mean, we've got an older outdated electric furnace or furnaces heating this building, which is not ideal. We don't have a generator system that's capable of powering it. So we always have to strike that balance going forward as to what point do we not go too far either, where we're just better off to look at doing something new. But so we'll always keep that in mind as we go forward. But at this point in time, unless council has some reason not to support this grant application, then we'll give direction to staff to go ahead and make the application for those 2 projects. Or the question for Mr. Hunt too was if you have any other projects in mind that may not have been looked at by staff at this point in time. What's the deadline, Mr. Hunt, for that application?
December 21st.
So we'll have one more meeting before that has to be in. So anyway, council can put some thought towards that. And if something else comes to mind, we still have time to put that into the application.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Anything further in your report, Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So the other thing is, so staff will be meeting with the developer on Porter's Lake property this week. The developer has a proposal in now to create 3 or 4 new lots. Staff is going to take the opportunity to meet with this developer and see if we can make this maybe a better deal than it's anticipated. We'd like to see more development in McDougall, and I think this is an opportunity where we can maybe work with the developer and try and get a bigger commitment out of them on that aspect. As the landfill building, the soil work has been completed. That turned out to be a much more difficult project than we anticipated. We found a lot of debris, large concrete blocks buried under the earth there. So good call to remove the material and put it back in. So we are ready now for construction there. So that tender will be released in January with a May start date. So the May start date obviously will be geared to, frost-free startup, and hopefully we can get that building finished next year for those guys, because working outside this time of year and all winter long on those equipment is not very nice. As I reported earlier, Public Works is doing a lot of big jobs right now, and they're cleaning up a lot of small ones at the same time. We do have all our equipment ready to plow and sand. Every truck is good to go. We are, however, waiting for the new 550 that we ordered, I think 9 months ago. I don't know where Ford's building these things or where they're coming from, but it's been a long time coming. Hopefully it gets here soon. So that's the only piece of equipment we're waiting for. We still have the old one. We're babying it along, so hopefully we can get that done.
Thank you. Any questions on any part of Mr. Hunt's report? Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Hunt.
Sorry, I do have a couple of things to discuss with previous council. The last week or so, we've been getting a lot of calls for municipality to take over winter maintenance and seasonal roads. So far, all the requests have been on municipally owned seasonal roads. We've never done this for lots of various reasons. One, these roads aren't built to handle any kind of winter maintenance. They're not, so the base is not good enough. They're not wide enough. The drainage is generally not very good in these roads. And I think putting that kind of frost into those roads will probably destroy most of them. So I know council is going to get some of these requests either individually or they may come to council, but we got to remember that staff was already tapped out with the routes that were set up now. We have 4 main plows that are set up. Those routes are set up, they're pretty much maximized now. So I really would like council to not consider not doing these roads, because with COVID being the way it is, we only have enough staff here to operate a single shift crew. So to take on any kind of responsibility in addition to what we have is, I think, going to put us just too much liability on us this year. If we lose a driver or two for COVID, we're in a tough position. So this is not the year to be adding a bunch of liability to the roads program. I think we need to kind of hold our ground here until we can get through this COVID. And if the residents who have decided to try and stay here through the winter and make their cottages work, they're going to have to do that on their own, because we just don't have the resources or the staff to assume this additional liability and still keep our crew safe. And if we do lose some of our crew, it's going to be difficult to maintain the minimal standards with what we have left. Hiring part-time crews is very difficult right now. Everybody is having trouble finding drivers. I think we really need to stay the course and stick with the current plow program we have today and stay away from any additional requests for service for this year. Any comments?
Was there a second item, or is that?
So the next item is a lot smaller item. December 24th is a Thursday. The offices are usually open normally here for half a day. I'm requesting the council allow the office to be closed on the 24th. It's a day when nobody hits the counter hardly ever. You know, I think it'd be a token of appreciation to staff or whatever we have. I think the staff has gone above and beyond this year to keep this place rolling when no other municipality has. Our doors have been opened. I don't think it's too onerous. If council would consider letting us close the 24th for the whole day.
Council, in terms of those two items or issues, I guess first of all, I'll break it down. In terms of the summer maintenance only roads, I think Mr. Hunt put it pretty clearly. Does anyone have any questions or comments in terms of not adhering to our existing policy? Councillor Constable?
Actually, my question isn't so much about deviating from what our current policy is on the roads. I agree with you fully that of all the years, this is not the year to entertain trying to increase services, especially to roads this late in the year that haven't been prepared properly for health and safety reasons and a whole bunch of other reasons. Would just be just not a good idea on us. The one question I do have, and one concern I have, is the one you brought up in regards to our COVID-19 issue. If we do lose a driver, looking at what our overtime we've been paying out over the last couple of years, I know each year we've done budget time looking through it, it's been quite high. And I do know that it's hard to find part-time drivers, but is that something that we could potentially look into to better prepare ourselves or buffer ourselves if we do end up having somebody go down, whether it be just regular sickness or COVID-19 or something along that ways? Just more of an open discussion than what I think we should do.
Mr. Hunt?
So it's a good point, Councillor Constable. I did sit this week with the public works staff and we had that very discussion as to how we're going to do this if somebody does go down. We are developing a plan right now where we could, at the very minimum, keep all 4 of our main routes open. And how we're going to respond if one driver gets sick or 2 drivers get sick, you know, how we're going to deal with this here. So we are putting a plan together. I can tell you right now, it's looking pretty good, like we can do this in-house. It just means moving a few more people around in other departments to help us out. And if push comes to shove, if we have to lighten up on a recreation side, or if we have to lighten up at the landfill side to meet our responsibilities on public transportation, that's what we're going to do. Transportation is going to come first. It's our greatest liability. So we are going to have a good plan in place. They are all putting their heads together right now this week. We're going to meet again early next week and try and get this laid out so that everybody understands the role today, and they're going to understand the role when things start to go sideways. So, but we are looking at how we're going to fill these positions, whether we can do it internally or externally. And it looks like we can do it internally unless we lose 4 or 5, that's different. You know, then we'll be struggling, but I think we're going to be fine.
Councillor Ryman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question. Is there anything that stops a council member from lending a hand in that regard? Experienced council member, because I am relatively experienced at plowing. Just a question.
Mr. Hunt?
No, there's not.
Careful what you ask for.
I'm at your beckoning call.
Is this a volunteer thing? Paying you may
We can talk. We'll talk.
Paying you may be an issue. We'll have to work through that there. If you're volunteering, that's different.
Right. Anyway, I think we're hearing that sounds like staff have been trying to run through different scenarios to work out what's best. It's always hard to deal with what may happen. Hopefully we don't get into that situation, but as we move forward, I know the past years, we always get lots of compliments in terms of our road crews and our maintenance and our plowing on our roads. So I have every confidence that that will continue through. And I rely on our staff to help get us there, and maybe a counselor. In terms of the maintenance, I think we're all in agreement with standing with our existing policy in terms of summer maintenance. Those roads are clearly marked as summer maintenance. The people on those roads know they're summer maintenance. And I think it also needs to be said too that we're not plowing those roads, but no one can plow those roads privately either, because that opens up a huge liability issue for the municipality. You've got someone in there plowing a road who isn't doing it as professionally as our crews. And they're still exposing our roads to a lot of damage from frost and that. So our policy stands, and our policy is that you don't use them in the winter, and we don't maintain them, and you don't maintain them either. So that needs to be very clear for people. I understand right now people are trying to stay as safe as they can and be where they are, but we can't put other people at risk as well for other reasons other than COVID. So I didn't hear any comments to the contrary from council, so we'll just stay the course on that issue.
Very good.
Thank you.
Councillor Gregory?
Councillor Gregory?
Mhm.
You're not in your.
Okay, all right, we're in. Thank you. I just wondered, do we have to change the designation of 9 Mile Road? Isn't it supposed to be seasonal?
Pardon? Yep. It is. Well, it's designated as a permanent road, so, and it's built to be plowed. It's the only road that is built the right width to be plowed, so that's the only one we could even consider.
Okay, thank you.
And just for clarification on that, I think Mr. Leduc did it in his report, the last council meeting. There's no overnight parking down that road either once it's plowed and open. It's just for people to go down during the day if they want to go for walks or use the gazebo or stage a snowmobile trip from there for the day, but you're not to be using it overnight. So we're not opening that up to residential use either.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on Mr. Hunt's report? Okay. General items and new business? None. On to bylaws. Bylaw 2020-50, moved by Councillor Ryman, second by Councillor Gregory, that bylaw 2020-50 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2017-05 to rezone parts of lots 11 and 12, concession 2, geographic township of McDougall for Mercer, be introduced and read a first and second time. Discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. It's a pleasure of council to give this third and final reading tonight.
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Constable, second by Councillor Gregory, that bylaw 2020-50 be read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Final discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. I've been missing too many lately. We want to bylaw 2020-51, moved by Councillor Gregory, seconded by Councillor Constable, that bylaw 2020-51 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2017-05 to rezone part of lot 20, concession 10, geographic township of McDougall for Durance, be introduced and read a first and second time. Discussion. All those in favor? Carried. Pleasure of council to give this third and final reading. Moved by Councillor Ryman, second by Councillor Constable, that bylaw 2020-50 run read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Final discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. No items for the tracking sheet. No items for closed session. Confirmation bylaw 2020-52, moved by Councillor Ryman, second by Councillor Constable, that bylaw 2020-52 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the committee council meeting held on November 18, 2020, be introduced and read a first and second time. Discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Gregory, second by Councillor Ryman, that bylaw 2020-52 be read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All those in favor? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Ryman, second by Councillor Constable, that we do now adjourn at 8:12 p.m. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and safe weeks ahead.
Night.
Good night.